Okay, just starting off a quick test. R9 390 versus the GTX 970. Test machine is 4770K. I think I might have done it in a Dell Optiplex, so it was all the chip and everything was standard, 16 gigabytes of RAM. And basically on Fallout 76, the game does require quite a bit of VRAM if you want to get the textures up. So although this is low settings, I think you could argue that it probably looks better with the ultra textures than it does with the medium settings and the medium textures on the GTX 970. So yeah, I mean, basically these two cards were sort of in competition with each other when they were released back in, I think it was 2014. And here we are, nearly a decade on. There's always hot debate over whether AMD is better than Nvidia. I think just a lot depends on what game you're playing. I personally think that on this particular game, if I had to flip and pick either card, as it sits at the moment, I would go with the R9 390, just purely because I think the game does look a little bit better with that, whether you're on the medium setting, high textures, or go for low settings and ultra textures, you know, versus the GTX 970, which can't really push higher than the medium textures without massive frame drops below your 60 FPS at 1080. That said though, the GTX is likely to still keep getting updated drivers, whereas the R9 390 all support was ended for it back in 2022. I have tried a couple of third-party drivers to see if I could get them to work, but I couldn't get them to work. So this was the best, latest R9 390 driver I could get to work for 2022, and it's all right. I would say on other games, the GTX sometimes was better, sometimes worse, it just varies. But certainly anything or any settings where you require a lot of VRAM, you are most likely going to be better off having the R9 390. The thing would probably swing it, if you're looking at a sort of budget system, which is what these cards are going to be put in for me, is the fact that now your electricity bills in the UK anyway, you're looking at what, 35 to 40 pence a unit. I'll check the power draw of both cards in the system, and most of the time when you're gaming, there's about 100 watts difference in favour of the GTX 970, which was pulling around about 250 watts at the plug, and 350 watts was being pulled with the R9 390, and working that out at about 35p a unit. Basically, if you was to game for 2,000 hours in a year and you got the R9 390 for free, you're still going to be worse off financially than if you'd had to have paid 70 quid or so for the GTX 970. So my recommendation overall, if you play a variety of games, is going to be to go for the GTX 970. But really, if the GTX 970 is not good enough, I would say you're going to be better off spending a bit more money and getting yourself a card that's better than either of these two cards. In all fairness to the R9 390, it does play this particular game near enough as well as a GTX 1070. But my recommendation really for a budget rig is actually a GTX 1060. It's just I've been looking at £250 budget builds, and they're just that little bit too expensive at the minute that I can't quite fit one within that budget. But once prices come down sort of to the level that GTX 970s and R9s are now, they are going to be the card to have. And my real recommendation would be just spend the extra 20, 30, £40 and get the GTX 1060. that is definitely the go-to budget card at the moment in 2023. Let me know what you think anyway in the comments below. Hope this has helped anyone looking to build a cheap gaming rig. See you on the next one.